Critics are supposed to guide audiences. They review films, analyze craft, and decide what's good cinema. But what happens when critics and audiences completely disagree? Over the last few decades, some movies were destroyed by critics, earning brutal Rotten Tomatoes scores, yet audiences showed up, paid money, rewatched them, and turned them into cult classics. In some cases, the gap between critic scores and audience approval reached 50 to 60 percentage points, one of the largest divides in film history. Tonight, we're exploring why this happens, how these movies survived critical rejection, and what their success says about who really decides a film's value. In 1989, Eddie Murphy was one of the biggest stars on the planet. He decided to write, direct, and star in a Prohibition-era crime comedy set in 1930s Harlem. The result was Harlem Nights. Critics hated it. They called the film unfocused, poorly directed, and compared it to an overlong sketch rather than a polished movie. Rotten Tomatoes critics gave it just 27%, but audiences disagreed strongly. Viewers responded to the cast, the setting, and Murphy's confidence. The movie earned 80% audience approval and more than doubled its budget at the box office. This was one of the earliest examples of a star-driven film where fan loyalty mattered more than critical consensus. It also revealed something important: critics judge structure and technique, audiences judge entertainment value. Sometimes, critics don't reject movies because they're bad, but because they're uncomfortable. In 1997, Event Horizon arrived in theaters as a science fiction horror film blending cosmic dread with graphic imagery. Critics called it excessive, derivative, and incoherent. Many reviewers specifically attacked its disturbing visuals and violence. The film scored barely above 30% with critics. The studio lost confidence and quietly released it with minimal promotion. At the box office, it failed, but years later, something changed. Through home video and late-night viewings, horror fans rediscovered the film. What critics called gratuitous, fans saw as bold commitment to cosmic horror. Comedy is one of the hardest genres for critics to evaluate. In 1995, Tommy Boy was released starring Chris Farley and David Spade. Critics dismissed it as a sloppy collection of gags with little narrative depth. Some of the most famous critics of the era gave it scathing reviews. Rotten Tomatoes critics settled at 39%. Audiences, they loved it, with a 90% audience score, strong CinemaScore ratings, and massive home video success. Tommy Boy became a defining comedy of the 1990s. Why? Because physical comedy, chemistry, and quotable moments don't always translate onto a critic's checklist. They translate into repeat viewings. This film proved that laughter doesn't need critical validation to endure. Few films represent critic-audience division better than The Boondock Saints. Upon release, critics labeled it amateurish, derivative, and excessively violent. Its theatrical release was tiny, earning almost nothing at the box office. Critic score: 27%, audience score: 91%. The difference was staggering. What critics rejected, audiences embraced. The film's vigilante themes, religious symbolism, and raw energy resonated with viewers who discovered it on DVD. Word of mouth turned it into a phenomenon. It sold millions in home video and built a loyal fan base that critics never predicted. This film didn't succeed because of marketing or reviews. It succeeded because people recommended it to each other. Time has a way of exposing the limits of criticism. Movies like Swordfish and National Treasure followed similar paths, criticized for weak logic or shallow storytelling, yet financially successful and endlessly rewatchable. These films reveal an uncomfortable truth. Critics don't decide what survives. Audiences do. Critical reviews capture a moment in time. Audience loyalty builds legacy. When viewers connect emotionally, whether through fear, laughter, spectacle, or nostalgia, no Rotten Tomatoes score can erase that bond. In the end, cinema isn't a classroom exercise. It's a shared experience. And sometimes, the movies critics hated the most are the ones audiences refuse to forget.